not appear, then another time he did the same. But if you look at the content of my question, it is the money which has not been disbursed to NHIF, because NHIF did their work, they awarded these victims, but then Treasury has not been able to release 11.6 billion to NHIF so that they can pay. So, Mr. Speaker, when the CS now ask us to go to the Minister of Health, he is running away from his responsibility. The Ministry of Health does not allocate budgets. If they have given the money that they need is 11.6 to pay these people, then Treasury should be held responsible so that they can be able to pay these victims. These people are already dead, and the beneficiaries or their kins are following this money day in, day out. I have one case which made me to do this and investigate from one of my constituents from Meru, who the wife died due to COVID in 2020. But to date, is owned 7 million by NHIF. He has followed this money. I've assisted him through the Ministry of Health, but still, Mr. Speaker, he is always referred to Treasury. So that is why I don't know if you how you'll guide me to go ahead, because this question is like the CS is dropping because of the responsibility that he should do. So, Mr. Speaker, I will seek your guidance also to direct that the CS should appear himself, Treasury CS, so that he can be able to answer this question, because I can see he's running away from it. Also, Mr. Speaker, you know, you are the chair of SBC, which allocates the businesses of this house. And you know, we have no time before the end of this session. So today morning, you allocated time for these CSs and put aside all other businesses that we have in this house. So, Mr. Speaker, when we receive letters in the morning that the CS is not appearing, and we have a lot of pending business, Mr. Speaker, I feel these CSs are not respecting this house, and this is the right time to crack the whip. So, Mr. Speaker, we are very committed to do the work that we're elected to do. And if the CSs are not honoring this house, then they should be sanctioned, Mr. Speaker, so that they can be able to respect this house. This is an honorable house of 47 delegations and the other 27 elected senators. So, Mr. Speaker, I think with your wisdom, before the end of this session, so that the next year we start on a clean footing, you should really do a letter, especially to the end of state, because he has the responsibility. And he's the one actually who supported the CSs to appear in the two houses. So, Mr. Speaker, I think, you know, this is the first time Senator Sifuna has clapped when I'm giving it. Yeah, so, Mr. Speaker, I want to end there so that at least Senator Sifuna can add to where I have left. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Karungu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we were elected to this House, the President implored us to amend our standing orders for the CSs to appear before us. We had the support of the head of state. So when they don't appear, they don't just show contempt to this House, also to the President of this Republic. And Mr. Speaker, as a feeling of many members, please crack the whip. My committee on roads, transportation, and housing, on Monday, after inviting the governor of Kajiado, Olelenku, to appear before us, even after summoning him, he had the audacity of saying that he wouldn't appear 45 minutes before the time the meeting was supposed to start. Mr. Speaker, we fined him, or we gave him a suspended sentence and fined him $500,000. And if it does not appear tomorrow, it will take effect. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and I want the House to listen to me because we need to do things differently. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we also fined the governor of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, who happened to be one time a senator of this great county of Nairobi. We have invited him since November 2022. We are in November 2023, 6 times, and he has never appeared, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, We gave that fine because we know he won't even appear tomorrow. And if he doesn't, Mr. Speaker, we are going to invoke Section 19 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, that he should be arrested and brought to the committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a high time that this House is taken with seriousness it deserves, Mr. Speaker. And you know, and especially those governors who are senators, they are giving this House a bad name. I mean, they should be the one to really respect this House, because they've been here for about 10 years. And they are the one who are not even appearing in committees. Even my governor of Kiambu, Kimani Wamatangi, Mr. Speaker, has been invited about 6 times. He has not appeared. I think we should crack the whip, because for us, in future, we want to be governors, and we don't want people to say senators were the worst governors. So we have to do it today. And for the CSs who did not appear today, Mr. Speaker, crack the whip. Give them a fine. Invoke Section 19. Because if you don't do that, we will receive the apologies a minute before we get into the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For me, I want to weigh in on the issue of the disrespect that the Senate is receiving from this cabinet, Mr. Speaker. I believe that when the Kenya Kwanza government ran for office, we are here for the hustler nation, for the people. What else are the cabinet secretaries so busy doing that they cannot come here to answer questions that the hustlers are asking, Mr. Speaker? Because for me today, I was looking forward to engaging with the Minister of Energy, Mr. Speaker. The bills on KPLC are crazy. The rogue billing, there's a lot of things that are happening under KPLC. And we have questions for the people who have sent us here. We have questions, Mr. Speaker. And I think at the rate at which it's going, Mr. Speaker, then I employ the president to kindly make sure that we have the chief administrative secretaries. Because if the cabinet secretaries are now tired of their jobs, let their assistants come in and do that job, Mr. Speaker. It is at this point when we would really appreciate that if the CSs are not there, they are not available, they are busy, they are traveling, whatever it is they're doing, then their assistants, Mr. Speaker, and those people who are already sworn in, let them come, we engage them. This is part of the duties that they could have been doing. The CSs now are sitting somewhere and they could have been serving this country, Mr. Speaker. So I urge that even as you crack the whip, perhaps it is now necessary, and I hope that opposition can see the role, some of the duties and responsibilities that the CASs were going to have. I hope that they can see that it is at this point, we would have gotten the assistant ministers, Mr. Speaker, to tell us what is happening. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, correct me if I'm wrong, but the High Court found that the position of CSS were unconstitutional. We are not going to substitute the people responsible for the ministries for unconstitutional office holders. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you brought those CSs here, I would not partake of that session. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I think it's the Bible that says that all good things come to those who wait. I don't know if it's the Bible. The Christian fundamentalists are on the other side, they will clarify. Mr. Speaker, I am extremely happy that every single day we have indicated as members of a minority on this floor, because you will remember that this question of appearance of CSs on the floor of this House originated from a presidential memo. It was the president's own idea, sending his own cabinet secretaries to the floor of this House. We, of course, were in opposition of that particular move because we thought, or it was our thinking then, that it was an unconstitutional way to go around constitutional provisions to bring them before the floor of the House. We actually filed a constitutional reference before the High Court. The High Court disagreed with us and said there's nothing wrong with the CSs appearing before the floor of the Senate. And it is not a coincidence that just the second week when the members of the opposition want to engage robustly with these people, they're already running away, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't make any sense. I was looking forward because we have a serious controversy in this country about the G2G deal. I wanted to look the CS Energy in his eyes and ask him those questions that I've written down here, Mr. Speaker. But he has run away. And this is becoming a habit, even in the committees. My chair of the Housing Committee has just elucidated what we're going through in the committees of the House. Because, Mr. Speaker, you invite a governor to answer questions about his own people. The people of Jericho, Lumumba, Maringo were in the committee yesterday waiting to ask questions through their senator to the governor of Nairobi. He just says he has traveled. And my suspicion, Mr. Speaker, is that this COP28 that is happening in Dubai is going to be one of the biggest scandals in this country. When the final list of the number of Kenyans who have gone to Dubai is published, we will be embarrassed as a country. I am happy that as a senator, I was told there is no money in the Senate. So I decided to just stay at home. Mr. Speaker, you're aware of this issue. So for us, because some of us have serious contributions to make on the matter of climate change and the environment, Mr. Speaker, but we were denied that opportunity. Now my brother Musalia Mudavadi has gone there. I doubt if he can be more eloquent on issues about the environment as I would have been in Dubai, Mr. Speaker. But anyway, let us see what will come out of that particular conference. So we want to say this, Mr. Speaker. In fact, this morning session was created specifically for these cabinet secretaries. We should have been having our committee meetings.
What is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, you have heard the remarks by the distinguished senator of Nairobi about the cabinet secretary. Mr. Speaker, is in order to drag into this house the fights between him and Mudavadi over the matter of kingship in their community? Is in order, Mr. Speaker, to bring such a matter here?
Senator Boni, in fact, you're out of order to the extent that you're rising on a point of order on a senator who is contributing on a point of order. To that extent, your point of order is overruled. Conclude, Senator Sifon.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure Senator Khalwale that I am not in competition for anything with Musalia Mudavadi. I don't see myself competing with him for anything. I'm just saying, and the communication from the speaker came that he has traveled to COP. I'm just wondering, because you know, this issue of climate change can better be elucidated. I would rather we send Esther Okenyuri, Senator Okenyuri, or my sister Gloria, because the younger generation have a greater appreciation of these matters than some of these guys. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I am deeply disappointed, and we as a House must put our foot down. I am very happy with the chair of Transport and Housing, the Honorable Senator Thangwa, that he doesn't joke when it comes to respect for the people and the respect of committees of this House. He has fined the people liberally, and I want to encourage you, Chairman, that we are all behind you as senators in that committee. Arrest people, drag them before this House, because some of them, they just fly in and fly out, Mr. Speaker, wanasema Kiswahili, wanabadilisha nguo bandarini. We want them to be arrested at the bandari when they are changing their clothes, to be brought before committees of this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mgatana.
Bwana Spika, mimi nilikuwa natarajia kumwona waziri wa kawi Mheshimiwa Chirchir, kwa sababu watu wa Tana River wanajua KETRACO walilipwa pesa ili zile waya zao zipite kwa mashamba ya watu, na watu wanajua mamilioni yalilipwa, lakini wananchi hawakupata hizo pesa. Wananchi wa Tana River wanangojea kuelezwa hizo pesa ziko wapi. Alafu waziri anakosa kukuja na wananchi wanamngojea. Mimi Bwana Spika, ningependa kutoa maoni yangu ya kwamba utoe faini sio ya 1,500, lakini faini ya milioni 1 kwa kila waziri ambaye anakosa kufika kwa bunge la Senate. Kisha Bwana Spika, uandike barua kwa rais kwamba wakati wa kufuta kazi mawaziri, wa kwanza wa kufutwa ni hawa mawaziri ambao wanakosa kufika kujibu maswali ya wananchi. Kwa hayo mengi Bwana Spika, naomba uchukue mkono wako wa nguvu, uwatie adabu hawa watu, manake wanatukosea heshima. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Beatrice Agola.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Honorable Speaker, from the word go, this morning I was very keen on the appearance of the respective cabinet secretaries, and particularly, Honorable Speaker, I really wanted to engage the CS Energy and Petroleum. Honorable Speaker, 1 year ago, I raised an issue of faulty transformers in Homa Bay County. And rightfully, a response was provided to the Energy Committee and commitments were made by the same CS on repairs that were to be done by the end of July 2022. Honorable Speaker, up to date, nothing, no repair has been undertaken as was committed by Kenya Power and REA in Homa Bay County. And it is on that note that I was really interested in the question that was given by Senator James Morango on the replacement of defective power transformers in Mwea constituency. Honorable Speaker, going forward to Senator Mohamed Chute's question, you see the disruption of power supply in most parts of the country. Honorable Speaker, in the last 3 months, we have seen historical blackouts in this country, one ranging for 20 hours, Honorable Speaker, nationwide, and another just the other Saturday for the whole night. Honorable Speaker, this house is a house of representation. The senators here, when they ask questions, they are representing their constituents, and it is by the coming of the cabinet secretaries here that we can get the different responses to the concerns of Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, on the issue that has been mentioned on COP28, I want to state that the issues of climate change are very important. We can see the raging floods all over the county and its effect, and so I support the conference that is ongoing in Dubai and is looking forward to participating. And Honorable Speaker, as I wound up, I did not get the chance, but I want to add my voice in welcoming the honorable members of the County Assembly of Migori, that in the membership present here, some honorable members have worked with in the past in the executive, and some are friends. And we welcome you to the Senate and hope we will continue working together. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must contribute to this because some of us, we've been around for some time. I remember the second Senate. We used to have a lot of issues with cabinet secretaries, where even National Assembly was saying ministers should not appear before Senate. It was a long fight for us to have cabinet secretaries appear before Senate. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I remember in the first Senate, we used to respond even to the questions or statements by members on the floor of the House instead of actually going to committees, just to improve the way issues are responded to. That never worked. In the second Senate, we thought maybe by taking statements to the committees, things are going to be better. But let me say here, Mr. Speaker, we thought, and I think the government went through a very long process to make sure that cabinet secretaries appear before Senate so that we can have direct engagement with them to respond to the issues raised by members and concerns of also members of public. Mr. Speaker, I remember one time we even gotten a warrant of arrest against the then Muranga governor because he refused to appear before a certain committee. Unfortunately, we were frustrated by the IG, we are frustrated by the courts until that guy escaped that warrant of arrest. Mr. Speaker, if we let this go, today none of them appeared here. Next week, the same thing will happen again. Mr. Speaker, we must take a serious action today, not tomorrow. And again, Mr. Speaker, as per our standing orders, if the statements that we have currently are not responded to, that means that they will lapse by the time we come back. Please, can you take serious action against these cabinet secretaries who are actually frustrating this House? And I know when they are called by National Assembly, they come running. But to the Senate, they see like this is a lesser house. We must show them that we are equal as far as responsibility is concerned. I thank you.
Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Kwanza kabisa Bwana Spika, hawa mawaziri inaonyeshana kana kwamba hawana heshima yoyote na seneti. Bwana Spika, hawa mawaziri walianza kwa kukejeli na kudhihaki kamati zetu Bwana Spika. Wakiitwa katika kamati hawakuji na hata hawasemi chochote Bwana Spika. Sasa wameona ya kwamba tayari wamehitimu Bwana Spika kutoka kwa kamati, sasa wanataka kukujaribu wewe kama spika wa seneti Bwana Spika. Wanangoja kwa hamu na gamu waone utafanya nini Bwana Spika. Usipofanya jambo leo Bwana Spika, seneti itakuwa imezama Bwana Spika. Lakini mimi nina imani ya kwamba wewe kama spika wetu Bwana Spika, najua utafanya jambo. Kwa sababu sisi tulikuja hapa, mimi nilikuja hapa asubuhi mapema, kisa na maana ndio niweze kuona waziri wa kawi Bwana Spika. Nimwambie ni mipango gani alionayo Bwana Spika, kwa sababu sehemu nyingi za Laikipia kwa sababu ya maji Bwana Spika hatuna stima Bwana Spika. Nilitaka kujua ni mipango gani alionayo Bwana Spika, lakini sababu ambazo tunapewa Bwana Spika si sababu ambazo zinatosha Bwana Spika. Hata iko waziri anakuambia asubuhi ya kwamba yeye alikuwa na mipango ingine maalum Bwana Spika, na katiba ya Kenya inasema ya kwamba katika kipengele cha kwanza kinasema nguvu ni zina wananchi wa Kenya Bwana Spika, na sisi ndio tunawakilisha wale wananchi wa Kenya Bwana Spika. Ninangoja kwa hamu nione maamuzi yako Bwana Spika. Katika kamati yetu nataka kumshukuru mwenyekiti Karungo Wadhangwa. Jana alifanya jambo Bwana Spika, alifanya jambo na Wakenya wakaona amefanya jambo. Sasa Bwana Spika, Mswahili anasema kizaliwacho ni kizuri kushinda kinachokizaa. Bwana Spika, ninangoja. Nashukuru.
Senator Muma.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this important motion, in this important debate. Honorable Speaker, I think what we are discussing is not happening for the first time. Members have complained before about cabinet secretaries not responding in good time, not just for the plenary, but also for the committees. Mr. Speaker, I believe this is the time for us to make a determination as to whether the Senate is a house of parliament or a house of jokes. Mr. Speaker, it is, I think, the highest state of disrespect for cabinet secretaries to receive notification to appear in the Senate at least 14 days to the day they are coming, for them to send you a letter the morning that they are supposed to appear in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, that is the highest demonstration of disrespect for this House. It means they think senators don't have anything to do. Senators can just be on a notice of a few minutes. Their meetings can be called off. We need to send a message that that is not acceptable. We also need to send a message that their own boss, who actually wanted this session to happen, had something serious in mind when he actually proposed that we change standing orders to accommodate them. Mr. Speaker, I suggest that apart from them being summoned, the next appearance, the 3 cabinet secretaries should appear without fail, even if we have others, so that if necessary, that session should be extended in order for the meetings to be met. I also suggest that the prime cabinet secretary should also be additionally requested to confer with the other cabinet secretaries to convey the seriousness with which this House takes this session, and for them to commit to appear to this. And I suggest, as DS says, the excuse by CS Treasury is not acceptable. Did he just interpret the questions this morning? He has had these questions for 3 weeks. I think they are joking with this House. Mr. Speaker, please crack the whip.
Senator Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I just wanted to know if the letter that went to the CS has got the clause of Standing Order 51C5. 51C5 reads, a cabinet secretary shall provide a physical and electronic copy of a response to a question at least 24 hours before appearing before the Senate. If you go to 51D, this is also very clear, Honorable Speaker. The Senate may, where a cabinet secretary fails without reasonable cause to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the cabinet secretary. Honorable Speaker, I don't know if the letter has got these standing orders written on them. Honorable Speaker, I was to travel to Marsabit yesterday because of the question that I posed to the minister in regards to public interest, in regards to the electricity issues some months back, that this country was in darkness for almost 20 hours. And this question was very simple, Honorable Speaker. We have a problem. Is this problem going to repeat? What caused this problem? Who is going to pay that cost? Today, the cabinet secretary is not here to answer those questions, unfortunately. Honorable Speaker, I would also want to support what Senator Katuri has said. A widow from Marsabit asked me, she lost her husband about 3 years ago, Jinia Guyo from Marsabit. And she asked me to go to NHIF to see if she can get the dues that's supposed to be payable to her. When I went to NHIF, I was referred back to Ministry of the Treasury. I was told the money is going to be paid from the Treasury. And today, the letter we received today is the Treasury CS is saying this is not his responsibility. It is the responsibility of the Ministry of Health. Honorable Speaker, I know very well, even Senator Kazuri knows very well, that he was also referred back to the Treasury. And he should come here and tell us what part he can be responsible of. And then the other part he can leave the Ministry of Health to deal with. Honorable Speaker, finally, I'd want to say, Honorable Speaker, please take some action. You remember when I brought the vegetable oil issue to this house, the CS Courier didn't want to come here. And yesterday you've seen in the papers, even today's paper, the lady in charge of KNTC was arrested because of the same issue, vegetable oil. This country have lost over 15 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. When you see the CSS refusing to come here, there must be definitely something they are hiding. Please, Mr. Speaker, please, you are the father of this house. You are in charge of this house. You are in charge of this Senate. We look at you and see if you are going to take some action. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Kindly take some action. Sansan.
Senator Richard Onyok.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you for allowing me to also talk about this issue. Mr. Speaker, it's very clear that the responsibilities of a senator, other than all the other issues we handle, is a matter of legislation. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that the Senate deals with is a matter of oversight. I've just come in this morning expecting the CS to be here. And I've just found he has not appeared. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm quite disappointed because Dr. Ndungu was my lecturer in the University of Nairobi in the class of economics. And he always used to say that you must be responsible and you always must be on time because those are the qualities of good leadership. I'm quite surprised that he hasn't come. The question I was actually going to ask, or which I had asked on the order paper, Mr. Speaker, is about him telling me whether the government has a G2G agreement which was signed when the negotiations for the purchase of the oil was taking place. The cabinet secretaries must understand that the responsibility they hold and their job primarily, Mr. Speaker, is to serve this country. Even when they have been selected and nominated by the president to actually work on behalf of the president, they are actually answerable to Kenyans. And those questions that Kenyans are asking us are the ones we want the cabinet secretaries to come and give us answers. And that is how democracy that's how democracy is designed. Our democracy is designed, and again, I've just listened to one of my colleagues say that actually this is the issue of cabinet secretaries coming to this house to answer questions was something that President William Ruto personally engaged himself in. And particularly after the ruling, Mr. Speaker, it means that this is something that is now going to take place in this house, and this is a responsibility of the cabinet secretaries. I would really want, Mr. Speaker, for you to put your foot down. I would want our colleagues to realize that we are here not by accident, we are here by design, and let them know that we are going to hold them to account. The responsibility of this house is oversighting the national government and the county governments, and we take that responsibility very, very seriously. Mr. Speaker, I hope your ruling will be drastic, effective, and will achieve results as fast as we deserve them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also rise to make comments on this. Honorable Speaker, the President basically is the one who requested this House and even National Assembly to amend the standing order so that the CSS may come to this House and answer questions instead of the chairman of the committees or chairs of committees getting responses and coming to reply on the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, it is deploring that this is not the first time. Even in the past, they have not been coming. And today we expected 3 CSs in this House to come and answer questions. I know most of them, when they're invited by National Assembly, they run there. But when they're invited by Senate, it's like they look for opportunities, they look for excuses so that they don't come to this House. Honorable Speaker, they cannot use COP28 as an excuse, because if the president himself is going to Dubai and the CS in charge of environment, I don't see the reason why the others are going there, and we are trying to have austerity measures to save money. Honorable Speaker, some of us were also invited. The climate change caucus of this House nominated some of us, but we could not go because there are no resources. How come most of all the CSs, more than 50%, want to go to Dubai for COP28 to waste resources? Honorable Speaker, you need to crack the whip, because these CSS will not take us serious if we just let it go the way they think that will excuse them. We need to find them. We need to censor them, Honorable Speaker. And we should not also allow the so-called CSs, Honorable Speaker, to come to the House, because the standing orders are very clear. The cabinet secretaries on the standing order, there is nothing like a CS. It is the cabinet secretaries who are supposed to come and answer in the House. Yes. So, Honorable Speaker, be firm and crack the whip, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as my colleague Chair Transport had said earlier, about some governors who were senators in this House, the governor for Nakuru, the governor for Nairobi, the governor for Kiambu, they're also very notorious. When they're invited to committees, they don't come. So we need also to ask the chairs, crack the whip, find them and censor them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today in the morning, I resumed my session, football session, in preparation for, Yala games that are coming in just about a week. And Mr. Speaker, as you know, we don't have any field to be able to train. So we keep on moving from one place to another. And today in the morning, I was training around Magadi Road. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I had to really rush to get here. Through your honor, may you just give me an opportunity to actually welcome the team from Migori. I'm very proud of these members of the delegated duties in the county assembly, and I hope that I'll get time to talk with them in our own tradition in Parliament here. But Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of rushing to get to this house, I also noticed that we actually are having a second week since the court did pronounce itself on the tussle that was between the minority side and the majority side on the issue of whether it was right constitutionally for the cabinet secretaries to be able to appear in this house. And indeed, the court did rule that it is actually okay, to the extent that now you can see the members of the minority side coming. But I do notice that since the ruling, this is the second Wednesday that the members of minority have been coming. And those two consecutive sessions, the members of the cabinet have been behaving in a very funny way. They don't appear. Mr. Speaker, if you go unanswered, you realize that even while the matter was in court, I was always able to come to the house and just listen to what is going on. And I used to notice that the members of the cabinet secretaries used to come religiously and attend their meetings here. I'm beginning to think that perhaps it used to be a tete-a-tete between colleagues from the Kenya Kwanza side. It was just a dialogue, that there was no interrogation, there was no nuance perhaps in terms of engaging the county, the cabinet secretaries. But now that the opposition is here to interrogate, to scrutinize, to be able to actually ask the right questions, they are running from the house, Mr. Speaker. And this is the problem that we had seen. And actually, this also indicts the so-called prime cabinet secretary. Because, Mr. Speaker, the work of the prime cabinet secretary is actually to be able, I'm saying so-called because it's not in the constitution, but it was created anyway. We disputed it as members of the minority side. But now that is there, Article 153 of the Constitution on decisions, responsibilities, and accountability of the cabinet lies squarely with the prime cabinet secretary, because his duty is to be able to supervise and ensure that the members of the cabinet can actually come to this house and answer questions and be held to account. So it is an indictment and a big failure on Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. And before we deal with these individual cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, there has to be a letter from your desk, perhaps directly to the prime cabinet secretary, that is doing very poorly and is embarrassing the entire cabinet because his members are not showing to this house. But more specifically, Mr. Speaker, as I finish, I think that I have seen in other committees that I've been in, whereby if we invite different officials in government and they don't show up, we actually very religious also in terms of actually punishing. We punish by summon because we are mandated to do so. We punish by fines because we're mandated to do so. Mr. Speaker, the censorship that I'm expecting under Standing Order number 51D is a censorship that goes with punishing these cabinet secretaries with fines. And Mr. Speaker, I hope that these fines can not only be for the House, but also somebody like Senator Kinyua and Senator Chute. On that fine, Mr. Speaker, if you can be, courteous enough, you can be able to make sure that Senator Kinyua gets his 500,000, Senator Chute gets his 500,000, Senator Gloria gets his 500,000, Majority Leader gets his 1 million, so that they know that this house is a very serious house, that people must learn to respect our time, because that time is extremely valuable. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support I support the censorship from your desk to these cabinet secretaries. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honorable senators, I have taken time to allow a number of us to ventilate on this particular matter. Indeed, it is very serious. Now, if you look at the three letters that are referred to this morning, none of them contain a reason that is an emergency. meaning all the three CSs, they knew that they were not going to appear before the Senate many days ago. Courtesy demands that they ought to have communicated to the Senate so that when we were sitting in SBC, we could have then dropped their questions because under their request and picked other CSs for purposes of responding to their questions today. Now, honorable senators, we have over 60 questions in the queue. We could not pick other questions because we were convinced yesterday when we sat in SBC, in fact, not yesterday, last week, we were convinced because there was no communication to the contrary that the CSS will appear before this House for purposes of responding to these questions. Indeed, receiving this communication this morning is the epitome of discourteous. Now, honorable senators, this House is not a house of lamentations. It is a house of actions. But our action must rest either on the Constitution, statutory law, or our standing orders. Many of you standing to contribute to this particular point of order invited me to be firm on the CSs. I have come through the Constitution, statutory law, and a standing order to see where the Speaker can be able to punish these CSs. If I had any powers to punish these CSs, honorable senators, that day would be now, not tomorrow, as you had invited me. Now, honorable senators, I will invite you to our standing orders, more particularly Standing Order 51D. 51D. Now, the punishment that our CS invites for non-attendance for purposes of responding to this question is contained in our standing order, more particularly Standing Order 51D, a motion of censure. Now, honorable senators, the Speaker of this House cannot file a motion. I can only moderate debate, facilitate debate, to make sure you do the right thing. If indeed, honorable senators, you are persuaded that the behavior of these CSS is unbecoming, invoke Standing Order 51D. As your Speaker, I'll be here to moderate that motion. In that motion, you may resolve any punishment. You can pass a resolution that this CSS be fined to the extent of whatever amount of money this House will resolve. How I wish I have the powers to punish these CSS. I will do it today. So, honorable senators, please do not allow this House to be disobeyed. Kindly invoke Standing Order 51D, and as a Speaker, I'll be here to moderate that debate. But this behavior cannot be left unpunished. I hope in the coming days on my desk, I'll see a motion. I will not hesitate to approve that motion of censure. So, honorable senators, do the right thing. Thank you. Honorable Clerk, next order, please. Now, honorable senators, if you look at today's order paper, order 8, order 9, order 10, order 11, order 12, order 13 through to order 14. Those are orders that are supposed to proceed to the committee of the whole. Clearly, we do not have the numbers to prosecute those orders. And therefore, we will defer those orders and will proceed to order number 15. That is the motion on the Shakahola report. I will therefore invite the clerk to read that order so that debate then resumes on that particular motion. Honorable Clerk.
Order number 15, motion. Report of the ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and circumstances leading to more than 95 deaths in Shakahola, Kilifi County. Resumption of debate.
Now, honorable senators, at the interruption of debate on this particular matter, that was on Tuesday, to the 28th of November, 2023, the Honorable Boni had the floor and he had a balance of 19 minutes. I will therefore invite the honorable senator to proceed to make his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just started before it was time up for the adjournment of the House. And I'd acknowledged the good work that has been done by this committee, led by the distinguished Senator of Tana River, Senator Mungatana. And because he moved the motion very clearly, using very articulative means, I don't want to belabor, but I just want to appreciate some of the salient points that I've found in this committee's report. Mr. Speaker, the committee has been humble enough to realize the complexity of the work at hand and come out with 1 to 9 action points, which it has recommended to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the DPP to take up, let it undergo the due process so that this criminality should be brought to an end. I allowed them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, further to this, I want to appreciate the committee because they have asked the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration to shut down the physical premises of Good News International Premises and Good News Media House. Plus, of course, their affiliates that are operating within the Republic of Kenya within 30 days after this Senate adopts this report. Mr. Speaker, it is very important because Kenyans know, and they have seen the footage, where even while this criminal is in court, whenever he makes appearances in court, we still have some people who are foolish enough to celebrate him. So the answer is for the place to be closed down physically. Mr. Speaker, I want to laud the committee that they have asked the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the Director of Public Prosecutions to initiate the process of freezing the assets belonging to Paul Mackenzie and any other associates, and the proceeds be used to compensate the families of the deceased victims. Mr. Speaker, this is very reflective. Paul Mackenzie, like many such misguided so-called prophets and preachers, they use the pretext of the people's vulnerability to have a better life after death. They convert them into paupers, and in the process, they enrich themselves. It is not surprising, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that the country is abound of preachers who drive fuel guzzlers. Some even have helicopters just to show how good they are at looting the public. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Administration must declare the Good News International Ministries and Good News Media House Limited as organized criminal gangs. These are criminal gangs, and I am very, very personally offended by the lack of cooperation on the part of Professor Kindiki when this committee wanted him to help the committee to have witnesses appear before them. Mr. Speaker, it was unfortunate that the professor of law said he was going to speak for the witnesses. Since when? Since when did a minister speak for a criminal? Since when did a minister have privileged information that he could give to a serious committee like this one? I want to appeal to my younger brother, Professor Kindiki. Humble yourself. You should have allowed Kenyans who wanted to give evidence to do so. What are you protecting, Professor? If the DCI, the NIS, was able to appear before the committee, and where they thought certain pieces of evidence required secrecy, they applied for being heard in camera. Our professor has been a deputy speaker in this house. Our professor has been leader of the majority in this house. He knows these privileges. Or was he deliberately trying to frustrate the committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya? Your Excellency, President William Samoei Ruto, we are going to help you to get rid of non-functional ministers who are for anything else as good as dead wood. Mr. Speaker, why would a minister make it difficult for a committee of Parliament to deliver? Oh, when I think about the grief in Kakamega, in the villages of Mumias, in the villages of Ikolmani, in the villages of Shinyalu, in the villages of our community, when we learned that our teachers, some of our teachers had died in Shakahola, I have no kind words for anybody who shielded the exposure of these criminals. Mr. Speaker, in this elaborate report, which I'm glad that now all members are acquainted with, the committee is asking the National Police Service Commission to severely sanction security officers whose acts of commission and omission aided or abetted the Shakahola tragedy 30 days from now. Mr. Speaker, so that it remains evidently clear to the Republic of Kenya that civil servants, senior security officers, they drink and dine on the blood of the poor. The committee has been very specific. It has said on page 135, Mr. Speaker, that Mr. Joseph Kemboi, the senior superintendent of police in charge of the sub-county police commander in Malindi, should be disciplined. Charles Kamau Wangu, the assistant superintendent of police, the criminal investigation officer in Malindi, should be disciplined, as should Simon Odera, superintendent of police, sub-county police commander, as should Mr. Guracha, the superintendent of police, critical infrastructure protection unit in Malindi, as should Augusto Akuna, officer commanding police station in Malindi, as should Hassan Hamara, Officer Commanding Police Station, Langobaya, and Calvin Maloa Otieno, the DCI of Malindi, Daniel Mudusi Muleli, the County Criminal Investigation Officer, Jacinda Wesonga, County Police Commander, Paul Maweu, Critical Infrastructure Protection Unit Officer, and Joseph Yator, Police Officer attached to Directorate of Criminal Investigations. They should be disciplined. Mr. Speaker, why I'm reading out these names in this August House is so that members of the public in Shakahola, in Malindi, in Kilifi, in Coast, everywhere in Kenya, should not obey any instruction from any of these officers, should the usual nonsense of government of transferring police officers who are supposed to be sacked be the practice in this case. I can assure any of them, if they appear in Kakamega on transfer, I will request politely the bullfighters of Kayega to resist.
Honorable Bonnie, are you calling for civil disobedience in Kakamega? Kindly withdraw that statement and proceed with your very good contribution.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so directed, and I do. But let it be understood that in our community, we say, he who is mourning knows no shame. This is in this debate I'm mourning. I have been to those homes. In fact, in some of the homes, Mr. Speaker, we have already buried wet banana stems. In our culture, you bury a wet banana stem when you have lost out all the possibility of ever bringing your beloved one to be buried home. Because having stayed in Kilifi, our families have been there for months on end. And it is either DNA or what cannot be found, and therefore they are unable to know who amongst all these bodies is indeed their own beloved one. So they have buried bananas. I therefore withdraw that remark and appeal to the security organs to ensure that disciplinary action is taken against these criminals who are in uniform. The committee recommends also at 448 that Parliament enacts the proposed Religious Organization Bill 2023 to provide legislative framework for the regulation of religious organizations and establishment of Office of the Registrar of Religious Organization, registration framework, qualification of religious leaders, offenses, and penalties for non-compliance. Mr. Speaker, if I had the power, and I don't have, I would convert Senator Mungatana's committee into a special committee to work on this bill. This bill must be available. The tragedy that is Shakahola has now given us the opportunity, the reason, the courage, the excuse for us to face our religious leaders and tell them, you are going to be regulated. Religious organizations must be regulated. Why do we have the Bible? Why do we have the 10 Commandments? Why do we have the teachings of the disciples of Jesus Christ? Why do we have the teachings of Prophet Muhammad in the Quran? Those teachings are meant to set standard so as to regulate. So regulation is already provided for in the Bible, it is provided for in the Holy Quran, is provided for even in the Constitution. We must regulate churches. There are far too many. Let me tell you, from Shigalagala Junction to Marinya, on the way, on the road from Shigalagala to Butere.
Senator Boni Karwale, what is your point of order?
Yes.
Senator Okech.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I wouldn't at all want to, and I'm raising understanding order number 105 on statement of fact. I wouldn't at all want to, interrupt the cadence with which the majority whip is already presenting. And these are very passionate issues that I know that we worked on very, very well. But I want just to say that, the chapter and the report that you have just read is not on the regulation of churches, is on the regulation of religious organizations, which is inclusive of churches. I want to stress this because one of the eminent challenges we faced, Mr. Speaker, when we were conducting, public participation in the entire exercise, it was assumed that we are only making a recommendation to attack or regulate churches. The regulation is for all religious organizations that are not limited to churches. So, Senior, that's what all the cadence I wanted you to go with. But sorry for interrupting, but it's important to emphasize on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That was actually a point of information which you have received.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to laud him for that piece of information. But Senator Omigori, if anybody has sent you to this house to be interrupting the Senator of Kakamega when I'm debating, go and tell him that the strategy is for you to wait for your time and then debate.
Senator
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Ndokeche is very much in order to inform you or to seek clarification. That is why he's in this house. Don't gag him for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And you raise your minutes. You are
Mr.
doing
Speaker.
so well now. Clear your minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if he wanted to inform me, he would have asked me to allow him to inform me, and I would have gladly to have done so. I'm just helping him to be a better legislator. And I can assure you, you have an opportunity to be a better legislator in this house. If you talk to Senator Mungatana.
Senator Bone, you should not talk to your colleague directly.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
You see, you know I'm not here just by chance. I'm here to present the house. So if you could start communicating to your colleague directly, then you better tell me to go and look for or plug my tea in Meru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm guided. You know, I was speaking to the Holy Quran and the Bible, and I'm not too sure which verse in the two books, but there's a provision that blessed are those who believe when they don't see. Mr. Speaker, sir, in paragraph 509, the committee recommends that the Director of Criminal Investigations investigates the relationship between Paul Mackenzie and Ezekiel Odera with a view of establishing any criminal culpability of Ezekiel Odera in aiding or abetting the event in Shakahola tragedy within 30 days of the adoption of this report. Congratulations, my brother Mungatana. This particular recommendation will stand for many years, because when you are frustrated by some civil servants, Mungatana and your team, when you are frustrated by some forces that we have come to learn later, in your efforts to get down to this, you took the unprecedented initiative of going to Mavueni, Mavueni, and the country raised eyebrows. The country thought, the country feared that probably Parliament was being compromised. But now that you have come out with the recommendation 509, we respect you. You are holding the name of this Senate high, that it is out of the frustration by functionaries of government that forced you to do the unprecedented by going to Ezekiel Odera's church in the manner you did. I want to appeal to Pastor Ezekiel Odera. Parliament was in your place. The children of God have died because they believed in the teaching of Paul Mackenzie. Pastor Ezekiel, I appeal to you from the bottom of my heart. Because of the blood of those children, please come clean.
Senator Professor Margaret Kamar. Senator Mwijaji Mohamed Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya uchunguzi ya Shakahola. Mheshimiwa Spika, nianze kwa kuipongeza kamati hii ambayo inaongozwa na Senator wa gatuzi la Tana River, Mheshimiwa Danson Buya Mungatana, na kamati nzima ikiwamo pamoja na mimi mwenyewe binafsi. Tulihudumu katika kamati hiyo katika hali ambayo ilikuwako ni ngumu kidogo, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu baadhi ya mambo ambayo tuliyapata yalikuwa yanahitajia uchunguzi wa kina, lakini kwa sababu tulifungiwa mfuko wa kufanya uchunguzi, vile vile tukazuiliwa kuwaona baadhi ya mashahidi na kuwahoji. Mheshimiwa Spika, kazi ya kamati ilikuwa kidogo ni ngumu, lakini tuliweza kujitahidi, tukaja na ripoti ambayo ripoti hii Mheshimiwa Spika ni muhimu sana kwa nchi yetu. Kwanza kabisa Mheshimiwa Spika ni kwamba swala hili la mkurupuko wa mashirika ya kidini ni jambo ambalo lilikuwa halijaangaliwa katika nchi yetu mpaka alipokuja Pastor Mackenzie na kanisa yake, ndio watu wakaona kwamba kuna hatari ambayo iko na baadhi ya watu walikuwa washapoteza maisha yao. Kwa hivyo ilikuwa ipo haja ya serikali kuweza kuingilia masuala ya mkurupuko wa dini za tofauti. Mheshimiwa Spika, imekuwa sasa ni rahisi mtu yeyote akitaka kufungua kanisa ama akitaka kufungua kanisa ama shirika lote la dini, ni ashike Biblia, asimame Jivanji ama asimame pale Mama Ngina Mombasa, ahubiri, baada ya wiki moja wiki mbili kanisa imesimama. Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja ya kuweza kuwa na kanuni za kuweza kusimamia mashirika ya kidini, kwa sababu hakuna mahali, hata sisi hapa katika bunge, kuna mambo ambayo tunaweza kufanya na kuna mambo ambayo hatuwezi kufanya. Kwa hivyo haiwezekani kwamba mashirika ya kidini watajificha chini ya uhuru wa kuabudu na kufanya mambo ambayo ni kinyume na maadili, ni kinyume na dini zao, na vile vile pia ni kinyume na kanuni za nchi yetu ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mauaji ya Shakahola hayakuanza na Pastor Mackenzie. Mheshimiwa Spika, Shakahola kwa muda mrefu, kwa vile inapakana na mbuga ya wanyama ya Tsavo, ilikuwa ni mahali ambapo wale watuhumiwa wa mauaji ya kiholela ya polisi walikuwa wakitupwa pale, na hili ni swala ambalo hata polisi wenyewe walikuwa wanajua, kwa sababu wakati uchunguzi ulipoanza, wale ambao walikuwa wametupwa mwanzo, polisi walijaribu kuwapuuza kwa sababu walikuwa wanajua ni jambo la kawaida. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tungependa uchunguzi zaidi ufanywe kuhusiana na wale ambao walipotezwa, hususan katika sehemu za pwani, kwa sababu wengi ambao walikuwa wakipotea, Mheshimiwa Spika, zile simu zao zilikuwa zinapotea maeneo ya Malindi karibu na msitu wa Shakahola. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna baadhi ya mambo ambayo bado yanaendelea katika masuala ya Shakahola. Kwa mfano Mheshimiwa Spika, wako wale ambao walichukuliwa kama manusura katika ile sehemu ambayo Pastor Mackenzie alikuwa anahudumu, wale ambao walichukuliwa kwamba sio wanaofanya mauaji ama sio wanaofanya vitendo vya kinyama vya kinyume na sheria, lakini wao ni waathiriwa ambao walikuwa wamepatikana pale. Mheshimiwa Spika, waathiriwa hawa mpaka sasa bado wako shimo la tewa na wamewekwa pale kama hifadhi. Mheshimiwa Spika, mnamo mwezi wa 8 kabla ya kupelekwa gereza la Shimolatewa, hawa Mheshimiwa Spika walikuwa wamepewa hifadhi katika shule moja ya kibinafsi pale Mtwapa, na tarehe 12 Agosti mwaka huu walikuwa wamepanga kujiua wote pamoja, lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, baadhi yao walitoa hizi habari na maafisa wa usalama wakawachukua wote wakawapeleka katika gereza la Shimolatewa, ambapo mpaka sasa bado wanaendelewa kufanyiwa uchunguzi na vile vile kufanyiwa ushauri nasaha, yani counseling, ili kuhakikisha kwamba zile fikra walikuwa nazo za kuweza kutoa uhai au mwisho wa ulimwengu unakuja ziweze kuondoka katika fikra zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, tungependa pia kupongeza mahakama, Mheshimiwa Spika, hususan mahakama ya Shanzu. Mahakama ya Shanzu ambayo baadhi ya washukiwa wamewekwa pale na wanapelekwa pale, na vile vile wale ambao wamepewa hifadhi na Shimolatewa pia wanakwenda koti ile mara kwa mara ili kuweza kuitikia na kuweza kuangaliwa ni vipi ambavyo wataweza kusaidika waweze kuwarejea katika jamii. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika,
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I raise
Mr.
under standing order number 98. Mine is just, I need your direction. Because when you look at this report, would it be neat and in order for the committee members who authored the same report to be the ones contributing last? Because they had opportunity, it is like they're having the second bite to the cherry. Would it be neater to have them even contribute at a later stage, because they had opportunity to enrich the report? Why don't we be given chance so that we can contribute to the report, so that we don't give them opportunity to prosecute these matters at the committee level? And I'm not saying they don't have a right, they have, but for neatness and opportunity to hear also our thinking, because at least their thinking is there. We said, Speaker, maybe you can guide, because understanding order number 1, Speaker, you have powers to provide direction to the House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Chalegei, you know, members of the committee also have a lot of information that you don't have. So balancing the two sides is better, so that also members can benefit from those who went to the investigation. So leave that to me, and I don't want to explain what I'm doing here. But for your benefit, you see, I have a list on my light. The report is here. I know the membership. And then also have the dashboard. You know, Senator Chalegei, I'm not foolish as I look. So I know exactly what I'm doing. Can you clear your time, Senator Mohamed Faki?
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, saa nyingine ukweli unauma, kwa hivyo watakuja kama hawa waweze kupinga na kujaribu kusitisha mtiririko wa mawazo wa wale wanaochangia. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema kwamba mahakama imefanya kazi nzuri so far, japokuwa mahakama za awali Mheshimiwa Spika zilimpa Pastor Mackenzie uhuru mwingi ambao ulikuwa haustahiki kupewa kulingana na maswali ambayo alikuwa anachunguzwa wakati ule. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona pia kuna watu wengi ambao wamehusika katika masuala ya Shakahola, wale ambao kwa Kiingereza tunaita first responders, Kenya Red Cross, yale mashirika ya haki za kibinadamu, polisi, watu wa upasuaji, pathologists, Mheshimiwa Spika, ambao wameweza kufanya kazi nzuri kabisa kuweza kusaidia jamii na kusaidia waathiriwa kuweza kupata nafuu na vile vile kupata ushauri kutokana na majanga ambayo yameweza kuwakumba. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo tunasema Mheshimiwa Spika, kama Red Cross wametoa mchango mkubwa Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu wale waliokwenda kule, kwanza kulikuwa hakuna structure yoyote ama mfumo wote ambao ulikuwa umewekwa, lakini kwa uwezo wao Red Cross wakaweza kuchangia pakubwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, mpaka sasa ile miili ambayo imewekwa kule Malindi mochari, Mheshimiwa Spika, imewekwa katika hifadhi ya Red Cross. Mheshimiwa Spika, wametoa container ambayo iko refrigerated ama imewekwa barafu, na wale miili yote imeweza kuweka pale. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba licha ya kwamba tulikuwa na janga la COVID miaka 2.5 iliyopita, serikali ya kaunti ya Kilifi, Mheshimiwa Spika, walikuwa hawakuweza kujitayarisha kuwa na mochari ama kuwa na hifadhi ya kutosha kuweza kuweka mili mingi kama ambavyo walitarajiwa kufanya wakati walipopewa pesa za COVID mwaka 2021, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba kaunti zetu pia lazima ziwe zina uwezo fulani wa kuweza kujitayarisha. Mheshimiwa Spika, haiwezekani kwamba janga kama hili limetokea katika kaunti ya Kilifi na hatuwe na uwezo wa kuweza kuhifadhi miili ya wale ambao wameathiriwa. Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nakubaliana na mapendekezo yote ambayo yamependekezwa hapa Mheshimiwa Spika, kwamba lazima uchunguzi ufanywe. Tumeona kwamba waziri wa usalama wa ndani Mheshimiwa Spika, Profesa Kindiki alizuia baadhi ya mashahidi kuweza kuja kutoa ushahidi hapa. Mheshimiwa Spika, alimzuia waziri Asha Juma kuja kutoa ushahidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati waziri Asha Juma alikuwa ni mtu wa kwanza kuweza kuonesha bendera nyekundu kuhusiana na masuala ambayo
yalikuwa. Mohamed Faki, samani kidogo, kuna haja ya nidhamu hapa, hoja ya nidhamu. Kwa Senator Chelgei.
Mr. Speaker, sir, again, standing order 98 and our standing orders. The senator of Mombasa is a senior member in this house. He knows that if you want to discuss an individual, you bring a substantive motion. Why is he, Mr. Speaker, can you protect me? Mr. Speaker, can you protect me? Mr. Speaker, can I be heard? I've been listening. Mr. Speaker.
Order, Senator Onyonka, order. Let him execute his point of order.
Correct.
If you have a contrary opinion, I can give you.
Mr. Speaker, the good member, and I don't mind the noises and echoing. I think my brothers have missed demonstration. They will go back soon. Mr. Speaker,
go direct to
but
our
Mr.
point of
Speaker,
order, kindly.
if Senator Faki want to discuss the Minister of Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, a distinguished professor, he should bring a substantive motion, Mr. Speaker. He cannot be mentioning people's names. That the other time we tried to mention some individual names of leaders, it is our other side who told me, Mr. Speaker, to bring a substantive motion. We cannot have a law that serves differently on our side. Mr. Speaker, let Senator Faki to withdraw and apologize for mentioning Senator Professor Kithure Kindiki or bring a substantive motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from Senator Onyonka? So understanding 98 and 1, understanding on substantive motion, Mr. Speaker, I request that part, the Senator of Faki, withdraw mentioning Senator Professor Kithure Kindiki and bring a substantive motion. And we are willing to prosecute, Mr. Speaker. If he wants to discuss Professor Kithure Kindiki, we don't have a problem. But he must bring a substantive motion before the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, he should refrain, because we cannot be mentioning people, Mr. Speaker, at the expense of just gaining political convenience, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that you rule Senator Faki out of order. Senator Eddie, Mr. Speaker, is pointing at me, and you know his name is not on the list to Rwanda. So I don't know why he's even troubling himself, pointing at me. Mr. Speaker, can you rule him out of order?
So, Senator Chariye, I was trying to listen to Senator Faki whether he is really speaking on the conduct of the CS Kithure Kindiki. But I think he has just mentioned a content that is in this report somewhere in the observations. So I don't feel like he has really entered into that area discussing his conduct. Yeah, so we just don't enter into that space, Senator Faki. But if it is something in the report, I don't think
Speaker,
you are not out of order.
Nimjibu Senator Cherargei kwa sababu yeyote anayosema
proceed and clarify what you meant.
Yako katika ripoti hii, Mheshimiwa Spika. Shida ni kwamba Mheshimiwa Spika, hawa watu wanaingia.
Clarify what he meant before I give any other member. Senator Mohamed Faki.
Mheshimiwa Spika. Shida Mheshimiwa Spika, Senator Cherargei ni kama wale tunaitana wanagenzi. Shasikia hajasoma ripoti, yeye akisikia waziri ametajwa anaruka. Kumetaja mawaziri watatu hapa na watu wakakubaliana kwamba they need to be punished. Ulikuwa wapi? Mawaziri watatu wametajwa leo hapa katika bunge hili, na kiongozi wa wengi yuko pale na atakwambia kwamba, na spika akasema kwamba waadhibiwe. Wajua saa nyingine Cherargei, leo ni Jumatano. Jumatano, ngoja Mheshimiwa Spika, Jumatano iliyokwisha Mheshimiwa Spika, Cherargei alifukuzwa hapa asubuhi. Kwa hivyo kama ataka kufukuzwa tena, mnaendelee kuninterrupt Mheshimiwa Spika. Tunasema Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Sifuna, what is it?
You know, Mr. Speaker, I have made this appeal to the Speaker before and members of the Speaker's panel, that in fact these standing orders protect us from frivolous points of order. Yes. I have not seen this particular standing order 121 B being effected by members of the Speaker's panel, because every single time, and the members who are notorious for these things are known, Mr. Speaker. We need at this particular point in time to cut out these frivolous points of orders, false points of orders that interrupt debate in this particular house. Some people are just here to shout points of order, and when they stand up, they have nothing to say, no content whatsoever.
Sifuna, before a member stands up on a point of order, how can the chair lead his mind?
That is not the point.
So
After
you
Mr.
must
Speaker,
raise his point of order, then the chair will rule.
Mr. Speaker, you have
As I have
misunderstood
done,
me.
As I've done that,
You have misunderstood me,
issue
Mr.
on that
Speaker.
matter.
You have misunderstood me. Understanding Order 121, there needs to be a time when a ruling is made that somebody is repeatedly making false points of orders. After you have determined that this point of order is frivolous and useless, what is the action that is taken? That is what we want to see, Mr. Speaker.
Sifuna, also, if you check on standing on, I think 101, you can raise a motion in this house to discuss the conduct of another senator, substantive motion. So you can have that list, then we discuss them and put them in order. So you have that space to do that. So no point of order again. Finish me.
Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri dakika zangu zilisimamishwa. Niko na kama dakika.
Work. Please draft the amendment to this Societies Act and bring it for us to consider. Set up this particular office. Nothing stops you from doing that actually, so that we can give direction to the people of Kenya and they know that there are experts who can guide people, who can listen and say, if you want to set up, a Muslim religious institution, these are the standards that we shall accept of you, so that we even stop this issue, because you've captured it in your report about cells that are being set up, and many people imagine or believe that these are the places where young people are being trained about terrorism activities.
I can see Senator Mugatana is on a point of
Yes,
order.
yes, no problem.
Yes, again, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inform my very good majority leader that in fact, Mr. Speaker, we have gone ahead not just to bring an amendment, but to propose a whole new legislation, which we have attached to this report, Mr. Speaker. And that legislation seeks to balance between the constitutional freedom of worship and public sector concerns, safety concerns. So, Mr. Speaker, I want my majority leader to rest assured that we are on course, we are thinking on the same direction. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mugatana. Please bring that bill. We prioritize it because this is a very, very grave matter. It's not something. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I remember it's just, and perhaps this is something that we may need to think about later. There are so many, what is this gentleman called? Mackenzies that continue to ply their trade across this country. In fact, I remember bumping into your committee at Kisumu Airport, Senator Mugatana, one evening. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Senator Hamida or who, Shakila, who informed me that you guys had come from a gentleman who calls himself somewhere in Vihiga, John Pesa, in Kisumu, and you narrated the very grave scenes that you guys had worked. In fact, I could tell that the senators that had gone on that particular trip were actually disturbed deep down to their hearts, because you could see the things that they have seen. Men and women who've been tied down. Some of them haven't fed for days. Some of them have lost their sense of consciences. So it tells you that there are so many such Mackenzies that are out there in our various counties, Mr. Speaker. And as a House, even as we conclude on this particular report and the resolutions that have been so ably captured, even after doing that legislation that Senator Mungatana has promised us that we shall do, perhaps part of the powers that we must give to that office that we set up, Mungatana, is to initiate closure and perhaps prosecution of people who continue to do those kind of practices. Because while seated at Kisumu Airport, we were actually informed that that gentleman, Pesa, or I don't know what his full name is, John Pesa, has been in this practice for over 30 years. And people know, and people have come to accept as if it's just a normal practice. And we know so many others. We watch videos nowadays, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Senator Mungatana, part of the other problem are these frequency licenses that we give to these people who continue to ply their illegal trade now over and above even their domiciled churches. Because without the frequency that this Mackenzie had, perhaps he will not have reached the number of people that he reached out. But because he could reach to them on their televisions and their radios, that's why many people were confused. You know, the ordinary Kenyan in the village, they believe that by the time you see somebody coming to the television and is able to explain things that, this is somebody who is properly checked, and they imagine that we are such a civilized nation, that there are systems that check such practices. That is something that we must equally address. Abuse of frequency. Public frequency, Mr. Speaker, are national assets that we shouldn't be dishing out to criminals. Because if you're giving it to Mackenzie to use to abuse our people and mislead them and kill them, believe you me, even terrorist organizations and communications authority must be put on notice on checking what is it that the people that have been given frequencies to run radio and TV stations are using them to do. Because if Mackenzie could use this frequency to mislead people and kill them, believe you me, even terrorists can get frequencies and use the same and run training, you know, misinforming our young people and training them in a bad way and do greater harm to this country. Therefore, it is my submission before this House, Mr. Speaker, this morning as I come to conclude on this particular matter, that even the issue of frequencies and how they are used is something that we must have a look at, Mr. Speaker, so that if you're found to be using whatever frequency and bandwidths that have been allocated to you to mislead people or swindle people out of their hard-earned currency, we punish them. All is said and done, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the work of this particular committee. I celebrate. You know, I was a bit concerned earlier in the session, Mr. Speaker, when the points of orders were raised, and Senator Boni Halwale, who today actually has again appreciated the work of this committee. And the only part I didn't agree with him is that he said some people are saying he should have actually said I was the one who raised that particular point of order and said, oh, these people had gone this way, and I thought about their conduct. But I believe in the conduct of the men and women who serve, our colleagues who serve on this particular committee and have given us such a wonderful report. I hope when we conclude on it, we shall follow up. I like that the annex you attached, Senator Mungatana, has a days. You know, in 30 days, this needs to be done. 30 days, this needs to be done. You know, we've had this debate. I know I've said I'm concluding many times, but there are many things that keep coming to my mind. We have had this debate about implementation committee. And the argument of those of us that agreed with the dissolution of Senate's implementation committee is that we said it is the work of every committee to implement its own work. Therefore, you don't need one committee whose job is just to wait for others to do their work and follow through. Now, the question we must ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, as I go to sit, is what about ad hoc committees? Who follows through with the implementation of ad hoc committees, Mr. Speaker? Because for the other committees, it's okay, and that argument holds, much as there are people who still strongly feel that we need to have a Senate implementation committee. But what about ad hoc committees? That is something that we need to resolve. With those many remarks, I support this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Ad hoc committees actually, they belong to liaison committee. They are born in the liaison committee. Liaison committee finances the under committees. So to make sure that the money given by liaison is properly utilized, they should report back to that committee so that now we can know exactly the money we give them is doing the work. But like this one, I'm happy because members are appreciating your work. So at least to give you a clean bill of health. But you report back to us to the liaison at some point with a report. Who do you want to inform, Senator?
In line with the suggestion by the majority leader, maybe we could involve the different committees. For instance, recommendations that touch on security be referred to the National Security Committee. Legal recommendations be referred to the Legal and Human Rights Committee, and the rest will follow through, just like we did with the dam report. Solar, yes, thank you.
That is fair enough, but to satisfy liaison that you have concluded your work, we need the whole report from the committee, from the ad hoc, and then you can give recommendations to the various standing committees. Do you have a problem reporting to liaison? I'm with you also on
You
the
know, this
standing committees, the recommendations.
the committee was born in this house. Now that the report has been made to this house, the house may resolve now to take it back to liaison, and liaison will involve the different committees. I have no problem with your suggestion, Chairman.
Yes, majority leader.
I agree with what Senator Faki is saying. Maybe, and this is part of the improvement to the nature of how we do our reports, because I took some time to explain that particular point, is that in conclusion, because they have done a very good matrix, this needs to be done this number of days, you could include that particular comment now to cater for what Senator Faki is saying, that security and blah, blah committee to monitor. So this and that committee to monitor. Thank you.
Also, maybe for future reference, our children and grandchildren, when they read this report, they will never tell where Senator Danson Buya Mungatana was serving. So the secretary also to note there is a senator for Tana River County. All these names are just blank. So that is my observation. I'm not debating, but it's an observation as the chair. So next is Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Wambua Enoch.
Thank you, the Speaker. The Speaker, allow me to use part of my time to also comment on the issue raised by Senator Cheriot and Senator Faki. The Speaker, you know, there is a reason why ad hoc committees are created. They are created on the understanding that the issues that they will be dealing with are too weighty and too involving for parent committees to be able to resolve the same issues within reasonable time. The Speaker, you protect me from the outgoing Speaker. Thank you, the Speaker. And so what am I saying about these ad hoc committees? The Speaker, if the committees are created to handle work that the House is convicted cannot be effectively handled by the parent committees, then it will be wrong then to create an avenue for ad hoc committees to also begin to generate work for the parent committees. Because where will we stop? It's a debate that we can have and agree on best way forward. There was a suggestion at some point that we seriously look at the establishment of the implementation committee. That did not come to pass. But the Speaker, that's a debate for another day. The Speaker, today, I want to congratulate the team led by Senator Mugatana for coming up with such a comprehensive report. And I'm happy to note, and in fact, this is a first one, and maybe it should actually become a requirement, that ad hoc committees, at the conclusion of their business, to the extent possible, should come up with draft proposals for legislation. Because they are given quite some bit of latitude, and I believe also facilitation to undertake their work. I'm happy to note that the committee has come up with a draft religious organizations bill. I will be looking forward to make a contribution to that bill, even when it is tabled in the House. Mr. Speaker, I'm also torn in between, Speaker, preaching today and debating the report. I will strike a balance between the two, because the things that we are dealing with here today, Mr. Speaker, are not necessarily exclusively physical. They are also, to some extent, spiritual issues. The Speaker, at the beginning of the report, if you look at even the title of the report, when they started, they were dealing with 95 people that had been exhumed, bodies. At the conclusion, they are concluding with 429. The Speaker, that's a huge number of people. And the agony of it, the Speaker, is that these people don't come from just one location or one region. These people come from all over the country. It is impossible for this committee that has concluded its work, it's impossible for anyone to actually place a finger and say, this is the exact number of people that were killed and buried in Shakahola. Today, Mr. Speaker, there are people that are still missing.
Senator Wambua, just one moment. Senator Mohammed Faki, what is your point of information?
The Speaker, do I want to be informed?
Would you want to be informed by Mohammed Faki, Senator Mombasa?
You can inform me.
Chair, I know, thank you, Chair. I know this issue of 95 and 425 will bring maybe the need clarifications from the membership of the committee. You know, when the resolution to form the committee was made, at that time, the people who had been mentioned were 95. That's why the heading of the report is the Shakahola ad hoc committee investigating the 95 people who were killed during who were mentioned initially as having been the victim of the Shakahola massacre. However, during the investigations, it came to light that there were 425 or more people who had died, because by the time even as we were writing our report, exhumations were still being done and new bodies were being recovered from the site. Therefore, the 95 was the initial number that we had when the resolution was being made by the House, and the report has to capture that resolution. Thank you.
Senator Wambua, do you find that information helpful?
No,
Because
it's not. It's
I
not.
didn't find it helpful
It's not.
myself.
It's not useful at all, but that's fine. Speaker, you're just saying exactly what I said, that when they started, they were dealing with 95 exhumations. By the time they were concluding, there were 429. I'm very sure from that day to date, there could be more. So it's fine. He has taken his time to do what he wanted to do. The Speaker, I say that I will mix two issues here. The Speaker, the Apostle Paul, when was writing a letter to his son, his spiritual son, Timothy, in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2, he tells his son that in the last days, men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, they will be boastful, they will be proud, abusive, or disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, and unholy. He continues to warn him in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, that a time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears would want to hear. The Speaker, it will be remembered that in the process of exhuming bodies from Shakahola and rescuing some innocent people that were lined up for massacre, there were some who were crying out that they should be left to die, that they were ready to meet Jesus. And that, Mr. Speaker, they had been totally and completely brainwashed to believe that this world is not their own, that they belong elsewhere. The Speaker, the thing that I find very difficult to deal with as a practicing Christian is how now to put the Mackenzies of this world, and forgive me, my bishop, Bishop Abraham Molo of the African Inland Church, in the same sentence, and think that I can compare them as though I'm comparing apples to apples. Mr. Speaker, something needs to be done, something must be done. The recommendations of this committee, I have looked at them very, very carefully from 135, and I have made 3 or 4 observations. I'll be very brief on this one. There's a recommendation, Mr. Speaker, to probe the Kilifi County Security Committee, and that responsibility is given to the DCI. The question that I have to ask, Mr. Speaker, when these things were happening, when these people were dying wherever they were dying, when these people were being buried in Shakahola, the DCI was operational. It has officers all over the country. The DCI actually is a member of the Kilifi County Security Committee, as is the National Police Service, as is the NIS, as is the Commissioner. Now, when we ask the DCI to investigate the committee, are we asking the committee to investigate, the DCI to investigate itself? And what will happen if they find that the committee is culpable? What judgment are they likely to pass? So, Speaker, I will build my case and conclude in 2 minutes. Just allow me to go to the operationalization of the National Forensic Laboratory. A very important recommendation. I have had opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to visit the forensic lab in Muthaiga. And when I was taken around the facility, I was told a state-of-the-art facility, only comparable to, I think, another one in South Africa, and that we should be able to investigate and conclude on any forensic issue not just in Kenya, but in this region through that facility. The Speaker, now we are telling the CS to make sure that that facility is operational. Now, somewhere within the same recommendations or the debate around the Shakahola happenings, and on the floor of this House, the character of the CS has been brought to question, and especially in his role in stopping witnesses from appearing before this committee. If that be the case, Mr. Speaker, how then is it expected that the CS will fast track the operationalization of a facility to bring closure to a matter that he has personally brought in handles for it to be concluded? Again, there is a recommendation of the Speaker to strengthen the Witness Protection Agency. And I believe, because it's open-ended, I believe that the officers responsible for that then would be the CS himself, would be the DCI, maybe the NIS. The witness protection, the Speaker, is a very important component of any investigation in any country. I have said on the floor of this House, and I want to repeat, the Speaker, I am a journalist of long and good standing. If there's one thing you can never take away from a journalist, is our vow to our profession never to expose the sources of our information. A good journalist will go to the grave with the source of the information, if they have to. The Speaker, on a matter that has claimed the lives of more than 429 people, the need to protect witnesses and to protect people that provide information is so basic and yet so crucial that, in fact, before you begin any investigations, perhaps that's where you should stop. You should start to ensure that the people that will appear before you and the people that will help you unravel the mysteries, they're given proper and real protection from abusers of law. The Speaker, the case I was building was on the recommendations made by the committee. I began by congratulating them for coming up with a proposed legislation on the registration of religious organizations. That's a very good one. But the Speaker, if ad hoc committees, and I'm not blaming Senator Mugatana and his team entirely for this, but if ad hoc committees would take the time that they take, consume the resources that they consume, and then all they can do is just make recommendations for further investigations, then, Mr. Speaker, in my own considered opinion, that would not be the direction that ad hoc committees should take. So, Speaker, I'm of the opinion that, first of all, it must be very difficult to form an ad hoc committee. It should not just be anything that people want to do, they form an ad hoc committee. The consideration for the formation of an ad hoc committee must be serious consideration. Once they are formed, Mr. Speaker, I think ad hoc committees should direct. Ad hoc committees should direct. They should not recommend. Why do I say this, Mr. Speaker? I say this because If then we make recommendations from an ad hoc committee, and I heard here contributions from members, including the majority leader, that ad hoc committees should actually even make recommendations to standing committees and select committees of the Senate. Also make recommendations to investigative agencies. So, Mr. Speaker, so what's the use then of having an ad hoc committee? I thought, Mr. Speaker, then the best thing to do for ad hoc committees to justify the time and the resources, and I do support that ad hoc committees should be sufficiently facilitated to undertake their work, including, if need be, foreign travel, to do comparative studies. If Mr. Speaker, that is achieved, and I know it should be achieved, then ad hoc committees should make unequivocal directions to agencies of government. For example, Mr. Speaker, what stopped this committee from directing that the Cabinet Secretary for Interior appears before the Committee of the Whole of the Senate to specifically respond to questions around him stopping witnesses from appearing before the committee? A clear directive, not a recommendation. What would have been difficult, Mr. Speaker, for this committee to direct that the head of security in Kilifi County be sacked and prosecuted for negligence of duty, which led to the death of more than 429 people. Mr. Speaker, when we start recommending that these people be investigated, and we have been told from the opening remarks of the report that they have been transferred to other jurisdictions, perhaps we will continue with the same work. Mr. Speaker, we are beating the purpose for establishing ad hoc committees. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support the committee for a job well done, but ask them to consider, maybe in the course of the debate of this committee, if they can also, it's allowed, Mr. Speaker, for them to amend their own reports and make even just 2 or 3 directives. So, Mr. Speaker, then we give ourselves some teeth to bite as a Senate. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gloria Uruoba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I go ahead to give my comments on the report that has been submitted by this ad hoc committee, I want to just take note, because I'm always reminded, Mr. Speaker, by senior members. I'm a first-time parliamentarian, and I'm always reminded that this is a house of order, this is a house of procedures, that we are guided by standing orders, and we continue to conduct our business within the framework of our standing orders and the procedures, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, I think it is important for me to point out that it is not proper that we just sweep under the carpet the issue of the irregularity that the committee went ahead and literally engaged in, Mr. Speaker. The ad hoc committee that was set up is rooted from the liaison committee. The liaison committee, as I'm reminded, is actually under select committees. Under the select committees, Mr. Speaker, we are guided by procedures and rules on how to conduct our meetings, how the meetings are chaired, how the meetings, can be conducted, all those procedures. As a matter of fact, I had to go back and do a refresher course on my standing orders, from standing order 197 to standing order 228, Mr. Speaker. In there, you will see how committees, committee work, meetings, and all sorts of committee business is conducted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to have a group of senators convene without the proper procedures, Mr. Speaker, and actually travel and go out and allegedly conduct committee work without Hansard, Mr. Speaker, as I am informed, that there was not even a Hansard secretariat to sit down and document on all the meetings and engagements that were being held, and document on even the witnesses they were allegedly going to see, Mr. Speaker. Then I ask myself, because I'm a new senator, if we are going to be the House of Oversight, how then can we come and say that Pastor Ezekiel or Mackenzie or the Interior Minister are out of order, when ourselves, Mr. Speaker, we cannot follow our standing orders? How then do we have the moral authority to even table, allegedly, a report, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, as I weigh in
What
on
is
this,
your, Senator Gloria, one moment. What is your point of order, Senator Mungatana?
Mr. Speaker, I had the rare privilege of chairing this committee. Mr. Speaker, the issue that Senator Gloria is raising has been canvassed before this House. We have, in fact, discussed it, and the Speaker has given a ruling on it. Is it in order for the Senator to resurrect the same matter which has been given directions on by the Speaker in this House? Mr. Speaker, maybe there are many other issues to debate in this report, but is it proper for the Senator to revisit an issue that has been debated and it has been given direction and a ruling given? To resurrect it, Mr. Speaker, it is a show of bad faith on the part of the Senator, Mr. Speaker. Maybe you can give us guidance, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Mohammed Faki?
I have listened to Senator Roba alleging that the select committee is under the guidance of the liaison committee. Under which standing order does it provide that the select committee is under the guidance of the liaison committee? Number two, standing orders that she had alluded to, but none of them speaking.
Senator Cherogey, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 92, 93, 98, 101, 101. Mr. Speaker, what Senator Gloria is doing is debating. In the rules of debate, you are not guided on what to say or what not today. Mr. Speaker, under the standing orders, so long as it does not, I didn't listen to Senator Gloria, Mr. Speaker, sir, trying to cast aspersion on the report. He is stating a fact that the select committee visited Mavueni without your approval. It is a fact. Let us deal with facts. There was no answer. It is a fact. They travel without your approval. Any senator who travels outside this country must get the permission and the approval of the Speaker. It is a fact. Mr. Speaker, I think Senator Gloria Orwoba is in order to debate within, unless, Mr. Speaker, these colleague senators who introduce gagging orders that are telling, Mr. Speaker, that you need to debate in such a manner. The rules of debate are very clear. So long as you don't impugn on article or standing, Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from the shouting?
Can you conclude? Because
Yes, I'm concluding, but they are shouting all over.
Conclude
Yes,
your point.
Mr. Speaker, you know what? Maybe there are things they ate in Mavueni that is making them to shout. Mr. Speaker, 101, Mr. Speaker, is very clear. There are contents of speech, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the contents of speech is very clear understanding on the 101, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I request that Senator Gloria Orwoba be protected to debate as she wishes. Even if she wants to discuss about the weather, so be it, because the rules of debate are very clear.
What is your point of order, Senator Onyonka?
Mr. Speaker, we have absolutely no interest in stopping my sister Gloria Orwoba discussing matters pertaining to what actually transpired over the Shakahola investigations. What I have a problem about, Mr. Speaker, is that the very essence of this House, the very word known as integrity, the ability for this House to be left with, to do its job without being blackmailed and without being put on the spot, whereby there are aspersions and allegations being laid out on this floor by my sister, where Honorable Cherargei thinks, Mr. Speaker, that the reason why we went to Kilifi was to go and eat the way he normally likes to eat. Mr. Speaker, and my colleague, Mr. Cherargei, we don't like eating as much as you eat. We went to Shakahola and on the Hansard for the simple reason that what we want to get is in Hansard. So I don't mislead my young sister with non-issues. Let her deal with the issues of why we got Shakahola. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mugatana, what is your point of order?
Speaker, I just, I like to listen to debate, Mr. And it's not in my habit, actually, to intervene on points of orders, because I like to listen to debate and hear what people have to say. But, Mr. Speaker, did you hear the Honorable Cherargei quoting Standing Order 93, 92, 98, 101? And none of those, Mr. Speaker, are relevant to what he's saying, Mr. Speaker. None of them. Mr. Speaker, it is not fair. It is actually not fair to stand up, take the time of this House, and talk about things that are not relevant. Mr. Speaker, earlier in the day, the Honorable Senator Sifuna had raised the question of frivolous point of orders, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we are requesting that we who want to listen be allowed to listen, not interventions that are not adding any value. And Mr. Speaker, guide the young senator to stick to the issues. They should not try to go back to rulings that have been made in this House. Mr. Speaker, this is a house of order. If someone doesn't want to listen, they can go and make noise outside, not in the House.
Thank you, senators, honorable senators. I have followed all the point of orders. I would like to start by first of all cautioning Senator Gloria Orwoba and refer you to Standing Order 101-2, that it shall be out of order to introduce an argument which has already been discussed in this House. So while making your submission, stay away from gray areas if you're not sure. Senator Cherargei, I will refer you to Standing Order 120, irrelevant or repetition and quoting standing orders, which well, you stated several standing orders. You should have stuck to the one which was particularly important to your point of order. So on that one, I will caution you. Senator Orwoba, please proceed with your submission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand guided. Allow me.
And one more thing, Senator Orwoba.
Yes.
You did mention that you're still fairly new in understanding the standing orders. When a select committee is sent out, it is not necessary that it has to be recorded on Hansard or there have to be a secretariat. What is important is what is captured in the report. And that is why you're making your submissions now on the report.
Mr. Speaker, I stand guided and protect orders that I mentioned, 197 to 228, guide us on matters business that is being connected under select committees. Mr. Speaker, I'm finding it very, very difficult each and every day when we come to give contributions, particularly as young women senators, that we keep on getting all this it's like, you know, I've heard Senator Mungatana, Mr. Speaker, stand up and say, guide the young senator. You know, Mr. Speaker, some of this terminology and allusions of discriminating senators based on their gender, based on their age, Mr. Speaker, this culture must stop. Mr. Speaker, as I continue to give my submissions, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Oruoba.
I would like...
Senator Oruoba, just a moment. Senator Oruoba, just to understand, do you have an issue with being called young by Senator Mungatana?
Mr. Speaker,
being referred as a young person?
Mr. Speaker, it is the context with which the senators use it. It is demeaning, it is downgrading, Mr. Speaker, and we are tired.
Senator
Mr. Speaker,
Mungatana,
allow me to continue with my submissions.
Senator Mungatana, what is your point of order?
Speaker, the Honorable Senator Oruoba, let me just say the very, very Honorable Senator Oruoba actually said in her own submissions that we young senators who are novice, we are learning. Am I not in order, Mr. Speaker, to just say you are the young senator, having heard her say what she had referred herself to? Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, with due respect, I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, if you have content, to let us hear the content. We actually sat here, and there are so many senators here who want to hear content. We don't want drama. We just want to hear content. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Cherargei, what is your point of order? It has been stopped.
Mr. Speaker, on your direction standing on the number 1, and of course number 98 is point of order is a right. Mr. Speaker, what I want to know, and everybody knows, under this standing order, there is nowhere that says young or old senator. It says the senator. So, Mr. Speaker, can I, Mr. Speaker, the context, Mr. Speaker, the context of saying the young senator, that context is wrong. It's like they're saying the woman senator or the old senator, Mr. Speaker. The standing order refers only to a senator. It does not say the young, old, or a woman, or a PWD senator. Mr. Speaker, let us follow the standing order.
Thank you.
And some of us will not be intimidated by shouts. I can tell you for free.
Honorable senators, if I may rule on this, the reference that Senator Mungatana made was directly picked up from your own comment, Senator Oruoba. No, Oruoba, when you were making your submissions, you did declare that you're a novice senator, young senator. Don't engage the chair, Oruoba, just listen. This, what happened was, I mean, the phrase young or youthful is a terminology of fact. You cannot walk away from it. Now, the thing is, honorable senators, we all know of the old adage that says, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. Being youthful and young cannot only be used to your advantage. Parliamentarians also have the Young Parliamentarian Association, which I'm sure you also subscribe to. So the terminology of fact still remains that you're a member who's youthful and young. Take offense with that terminology. Please proceed and submit your...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm guided by the old senator. Mr. Speaker, I want to now stay away from the, as you said, I'm guided not to talk about whether or not it was against our standing orders. Mr. Speaker, I want to go ahead and say that perhaps my message is that we should continue to hold our standing orders high, Mr. Speaker, and to remember that even as we are sent out there, there are procedures and we must follow them, Mr. Speaker, so that when we are tabling any report here, the report can actually be taken with the seriousness that it deserves and that we might not be suspicious of anything, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that for me, it is two things that have come out. In the report, definition of cults and all of that, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to legislate around the illegality of cults, Mr. Speaker. Because the problem that we have is not to regulate religious institutions. The problem that we have, and I have said this before, is that we have no legal definition of what constitutes of cultic behavior. So therefore, someone wants to wake up and say, and I've seen in part of the recommendations that we must, recommendation 502, where they say that we must regulate religious institutions. Mr. Speaker, I ask this, and I am a Christian, but I ask this, who is going to play God? Who will now come and say, I am God, and I'm going to regulate Seventh-day Adventists, and from today you must eat meat? Or who is going to come in and say, I am God, I'm going to regulate the Catholics, and you are not going to use the rosaries and whatnot? Mr. Speaker, it is completely insane that, and this I find very disappointing, that a whole committee can sit down and say, let us regulate religious institutions. Where do you start, Mr. Speaker? Who will now act God? Who will decide that the Catholics have actually...
Senator Mungatana, what is your point
Mr.
of
Speaker,
order?
I must be protected. Those are frivolous points of order.
No, it's not for you to determine, Senator Uruoba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is also, Speaker, that the report has not understood what self-regulation is or regulation of religious organization is all about. Mr. Speaker, when you're talking about religious organization and regulation of them, you are not talking about rosaries. You're not talking about telling them to eat meat or not to eat meat. Mr. Speaker, and someone using words like insane, and you are the one who has not understood what we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, if you don't have content, please allow other senators who want to debate to debate.
That is contemptuous.
That is what we are talking about.
Senator Uruoba.
Yes. Contemptuous.
That's wrong.
What is your point of order, Senator Eddy?
Mr. Speaker, you know, I'm rising under point of order number 105. Actually read together with 101. Because, you know, Senator Gloria has used terms like, it is insane that this committee would make certain recommendation, which for me, it borders, you know, throwing aspersions on the entire committee, actually, on the entire individuals who are in this committee, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know, if you are going to take a section of the report, a line that perhaps was sometimes a summary, Mr. Speaker, the committee has provided to this House an entire legislative proposal in that report on, I'm on a point of order. What is wrong, Mr. Speaker, with the Senator? Mr. Speaker, there is an entire legislative proposal on how to handle the misgivings that we are seeing in the religious institution. We have even a dialogue in this House. And Mr. Speaker, I want to beg Mr. Speaker, the members of the House, that the issue of Shakahola is not a theater for drama or a theater for some cheap popularity on the floor of this House, because there are serious lives that were lost. I would wish that as honorable senators, we can be able to discuss the issues we have raised in a way that can be able to give even some families who haven't buried their beloved ones some solace. I beg of the senators that let us not use it as a theater of politics and a theater of drama. When you have a report on your hand, there are very well detailed stuff. And actually, there is a whole legislative proposal with regards to what you're quoting. So take your time, go read, come back to the House, and then you're able to contribute meaningfully. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator John Methu, what is your point of order?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I also note, because I think many people want to contribute to this particular, but I'm raising on standing order 114 on imputing improper motives on your colleagues. I know the Honorable Senator Mungatana is worked up because they have committed a lot of their time, a lot of their energy trying to look at this report. But as it is in the rules of debate, we must be tolerant to each other. You must tolerate my thoughts. You must tolerate my thinking. That is the reason why this report has to be brought to the House, so that we can debate and we can enrich it and we can share our mind. So, Honorable Speaker, I find it, and you must find the Honorable Senator Mungatana out of order by number one, imputing that Senator Gloria has not read the report, because he has no evidence that he has not read. That is, please allow them. Allow me to just make my final comment. Honorable Speaker, you must then also find him out of order to impute that Senator Gloria does not have content, because he said, he actually said, Honorable Speaker, that if you do not have content, then sit down and allow the other people. Honorable Speaker, you must find the chair of the select committee, Honorable Danson Buya Mungatana, out of order, and he must withdraw, apologize, and take his time.
Allow us to debate the report.
Senator Mungatana, you had already made a point of order. Go ahead, make your point of order.
Mr. Speaker.
Because you mentioned him specifically.
Yes, so I have a right of reply. Honorable Senator John Methu has said that there might have, I said that Senator Gloria has not read. Mr. Speaker, there was a great member of parliament here, Jean-Marie Soronet, who said this house, when he was challenged to substantiate, he said, you cannot substantiate the obvious. Mr. Speaker, when someone stands and starts saying regulation of churches is to tell them not to eat meat if you are SDA, that's a person who has not read the report. When you say the Catholics should not use the rosary, that's a person who has not read the report. He's completely out of order because he's misinforming the public using this prime podium, Mr. Speaker, to say things that are not in the report. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to quote again for the satisfaction of Honorable Senator Methu that we cannot substantiate the obvious. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Charargei?
Mr. Speaker, as you rule, Mr. Speaker, as I agree that every member has a right to raise on a point of order. Is it in order for the Senator Danson Buya Mungatana to assert that there are members of Senate who do not have content or have not read? Does he have readometer? Does he have readometer, Mr. Speaker, to know who has read to which level or not, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the rules of debate, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the rules of debate, the reason this report was brought before the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, with a lot of tremendous respect, was for us to debate on it. If the committee felt that some of us would not give an opinion of saying the Senator Mungatana should be ruled totally out of order, not only out of order, Mr. Speaker, because you cannot be saying and casting aspersions. You can imagine, as he said, we have the prime platform. You can imagine Kenyans will now believe that Senator Gloria Orwaba does not have content. Yet we know Senator Gloria Orwaba is one of the finest senators in this House, Mr. Speaker. You must protect your members, Mr. Speaker. We don't want Senator Gloria to be harassed on the streets because Senator Mungatana says she's one of the best.
Senator Mazayo and Senator Eddy, you cannot direct the chair.
Correct. It should be thrown out.
Honorable senators, I would like to refer you to Standing Order 101, and this is specifically for Senator Orwaba while you're making your submission. submission that it shall be out of order to introduce an argument on specific questions upon which 113. It shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language, whether in respect of senators or other persons. As you're making a submission, try to use parliamentary language and avoid attracting this point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just one moment, Senator Roba. Senator Roba, just one moment. I also refer you all to Standing Order 1014.
Yes.
No senator shall impute improper motive to any other senator or to a member of the National Assembly.
Yes.
Please be guided with these standing orders.
Correct.
You have 5 minutes, Senator Roba.
Mr. Speaker, I have read the report, Mr. Speaker. I have read the report in depth. As a matter of fact, I've been waiting to contribute to this motion since Wednesday. And on Thursday, I sat here until 6:30, Mr. Speaker, when time was up. Yesterday, I was also waiting to contribute, Mr. Speaker. I can see that they've put the light on, yet my time has been taken. Mr. Speaker, in the recommendation that the committee has put out, recommendation 502, may I read it? It is on page 155, Mr. Speaker. It says, the committee recommends, this committee, the ad hoc committee that was put out, that committee recommends that Parliament enacts the proposed religious organization bill to provide a legislative framework for the regulation of religious organizations. Mr. Speaker, it is to that point that I am actually contributing and saying, who will play God? Who will be the regulator of this religious institution? Because that person must be a higher being. That person must be greater than the religious institutions. So that person essentially must be God. And Mr. Speaker, that is what I'm saying. When a committee has sat and said that this is the recommendation, I am now asking, because, Mr. Speaker, I am specially elected, and I'm specially elected by women, Mr. Speaker. And those women are asking me here to come and say, while we are putting and legislating and saying we're going to regulate the religious institutions.
Senator
Mr.
Roba,
Speaker.
if I could interrupt you. You read page 151?
I read page 155, regulation 502, where they have recommendation. The same report that has been given to me that I have been, interrogating, Mr. Speaker. I can repeat, this organization bill to provide a legislative framework for the regulation of religious organizations. Further, establishment of the Office of the Registrar of Religious Organizations, registration framework, qualification of religious leaders, offenses and penalties for non-compliance, among others. Mr. Speaker, I am then asking, and particularly to the chair of this committee, because I've read this. By the way, Mr. Speaker, I went to St. George's High School. It's not a small school. I'm very well aware of what I'm doing here, Mr. Speaker. I am just asking, who will play God? Is a question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to go further on that. No, kindly, Mr. Speaker, my time. I want to talk about another recommendation that they have put here, Mr. Speaker, which is on the social media. They talk about cleansing social media. They say that the social media platforms, there's even a directive to Communication Authority to be able to regulate the licenses that are being given. Mr. Speaker, the moment we are regulating licenses of particularly religious institutions, Mr. Speaker, then we might as well start regulating also music, because we do not want certain stations be given licenses to play reggae, because who knows what we think about reggae, Mr. Speaker. The moment we start talking about religious institutions being treated in a certain manner under licenses for, selling the gospel and bringing in, followers of Jesus, Mr. Speaker, then where do you stop? Because we'll also say that we will be regulating other content, Mr. Speaker. And all I am saying is that, and if my fellow senator, the chair of the committee, would actually just be tolerant to divergent views, Mr. Speaker, that we are giving, then he'll understand that when I was saying that regulating religious institution, for him, it might not mean that necessarily regulating the basic nitty-gritties. But what are you going to regulate if not the activities of the religious institutions? You must regulate the activities, because Shakahola happened, and I repeat, because of cults. We have not legally defined a cult, and we have not made it illegal for certain actions to be defined as cultic actions, Mr. Speaker. So then my submission is, instead of going to the religious institution, come here and give us recommendations of how we are going to define the cultic practices, so that anyone who's seen doing a certain activity, we can immediately point out and say, hey, that is a cult, that is a practice, and that is illegal, that person must be arrested. But coming to tell us that we are going to regulate religious institutions, Mr. Speaker, and using parliamentary language, for me, I will say that it is not proper, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, I want to submit and say that perhaps if the Senate ad hoc committee was not too quick to start.
I will add you 1 minute to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If they were not too quick to start poking holes on other things, I've heard that the cabinet secretary was apparently an impediment in so many things, but they could have come and talked to us, religious people who actually understand what it means, so that we could have weighed in and given them all this. Not support this report, Mr. Speaker, and I still stand that this is a house of procedures, and procedures must be followed. Nobody is, no senator is bigger than another senator, Mr. Speaker. No, he could be older, I could be younger, but the standing orders and the proceedings, they are there for all of us, Mr. Speaker. I beg not to support this report.
Well done. Senator Madzayo.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, yangu si nzuri kwa hali yangu ya afya kidogo iko na matatizo kwa mafua mengi, kwa mvua ya El Nino na kadhalika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kutoa kongole sana kwa kamati yetu ambayo tulikuwa tumeituma kwenda kufanya hii kazi ya kuchunguza maafa yaliyotokea huko Shakahola katika kaunti yangu ambayo ninayowakilisha ndani ya bunge la Senate, kaunti ya Kilifi County. Bwana Spika, kamati hii ilifanya kazi ngumu sana, na kazi yake ilikuwa ya kusikitisha, lakini ilikuwa ni lazima wafanye kazi kwa sababu ilikuwa ni sharti kulinganisha na yale maafa ambayo yalikuwa yametokea. Kwa hiyo nataka nimpatie kongole aliyekuwa mwenyekiti ndugu yangu